Hi, I'm Briella Hawthorne, and I'm 32 years old. I've been married to my husband Patrick for 7 years. We live in Denver, Colorado, where Patrick works as a high school history teacher, and I'm a graphic designer for a marketing agency. Our life isn't extravagant. No yachts, no penthouses, no luxury cars. But we have a cozy apartment with a view of the mountains if you tilt your head just right by the kitchen window. We split the bills, watch documentaries on the couch, argue about takeout versus cooking, and fall asleep with our feet tangled together. We were happy, or at least we were, until my mother tried to kill me. My mother, Gloria Hayes, has always believed that love is just another word for control. Growing up, she controlled everything. What I wore, what friends were acceptable, which after-school activities weren't a waste of potential. When my father, Lawrence, died from a heart attack when I was 16, something in her snapped tight and never loosened again. After that, her obsession with my future became a religion. She had a script for my life: elite college, powerful husband, impressive last name, big house in the right neighborhood, kids in private school. I wasn't a person to her. I was a project. And projects don't get to say no. When I met Patrick 9 years ago at a mutual friend's wedding, I thought for once I'd done something right. He was standing near the bar, listening more than talking, laughing at other people's jokes, not trying to be the center of attention. When we were introduced, he held out his hand and said, "Hi, I'm Patrick Lawson. I'm the guy they seated next to the dance floor so I can't escape when the music starts." I laughed, really laughed. He asked what I did, and when I told him I was a graphic designer, his whole face lit up. "That's so cool, you actually make things people see every day," he said. "My students complain essays disappear into the void. Your work ends up on billboards and websites." I remember thinking, he sees me, not as a resume or a future investment, but as a person. Patrick comes from a modest background. His dad is a plumber, his mom works at a daycare center. They're the kind of people who send you home with leftovers and ask whether your car needs an oil change before the weather turns. Salt of the earth, as my father used to say. Gloria hated him immediately. He wasn't wealthy enough, prestigious enough, ambitious enough. He didn't golf or belong to a country club, and his parents didn't have the kind of house she could brag about over brunch. When I told her Patrick and I were getting serious, she narrowed her eyes like she was reading a contract with hidden clauses. "Briella, you can't be serious," she said. "A teacher? You're throwing your life away on a teacher?" "He's kind, Mom," I told her. "He respects me. He makes me happy." Kind doesn't pay the bills. Happiness doesn't buy property. You're thinking like a child, not a woman with potential. When Patrick proposed 2 years later in our tiny kitchen with a cheap ring and trembling hands, I said yes without a second of doubt. Telling my mother was the part I dreaded. She didn't cry from joy. She cried from rage. "You're betraying everything I worked for," she sobbed. "All those years, all those sacrifices, and you pick a man who will never be able to give you the life you deserve?" "He gives me love and respect," I said quietly. "That's the life I want." Her mouth curled. "You're being naive, Briella. We got married anyway." It was a small ceremony in a rented garden because Gloria refused to pay a single cent if Patrick was the groom. His parents contributed what they could: homemade centerpieces, borrowed string lights, a cake made by his mother's friend. My Aunt Stephanie slipped us some money when Gloria wasn't looking. Gloria showed up in black to her own daughter's wedding. She sat in the front row, stiff as a statue, like she was attending a funeral instead of a marriage. Every photo from that day has one dark, angry blot in the corner: my mother, refusing to smile. For the first few years of our marriage, she kept her distance. She made little comments when we did see her. "Still renting? Still no promotions? You're wasting your best years." But she didn't actively interfere. Not yet. About a year ago, my body started to revolt. At first, it was just bad cramps that didn't feel like normal cramps. Then it was bleeding that didn't stop when it should have. Pain that bloomed in my abdomen like someone twisting a knife and refusing to let go. I went to doctors, then specialists, then more doctors. After months of tests, ultrasounds, and late-night Googling that always ended in worst-case scenarios, my gynecologist, Dr. Patricia Reynolds, sat me down in her office. "You have advanced endometriosis and large uterine fibroids," she said gently. "Given your age and the severity, I recommend a hysterectomy. It's the best option for your long-term health." I was 32. A hysterectomy doesn't just mean surgery when you're 32. It means final. It means doors closing you can never reopen. Patrick and I had already had the children conversation. We'd decided, long before this, that we didn't want kids, not because we hated the idea of children, but because we liked our life the way it was, because our careers mattered to us, because I had a complicated relationship with the concept of motherhood, thanks to Gloria. So when Dr. Reynolds said the word hysterectomy, my world didn't shatter the way it might have for someone else. But it still cracked. Patrick squeezed my hand in the doctor's office and said, "We just want you healthy. We'll figure out the rest." We scheduled the surgery for early November. Patrick arranged for family leave from school to take care of me during recovery. We made lists, stocked the freezer with meals, prepaid some bills, found someone to water our plants. When I told my mother about the surgery, I naively thought she might finally be worried about me. Her first question wasn't, "Are you scared?" or "How are you feeling?" It was, "Does Patrick know this means no grandchildren?" "We don't want children, Mom," I said. "We've always been clear about that." "Every woman wants children," she snapped. "You're just saying that because Patrick can't afford them." "That's not true, and it's insulting to both of us." She pursed her lips, eyes darting like she was doing math in her head. "Well," she said slowly, "this changes things." A chill slid down my spine. "What things?" I asked. "You won't have children tying you to him anymore," she said. "You could still leave, find someone better." I should have paid more attention to the way she said it, like she was planning. The surgery was scheduled for November 8th. Patrick drove me to the hospital at 5 in the morning, holding my hand the entire time. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, he kissed my forehead and whispered, "I'll be right here when you wake up." What was supposed to be a 3-hour procedure turned into 6. The fibroids were bigger than expected, the endometriosis worse, scar tissue everywhere. When I finally surfaced from the anesthesia, I was in brutal pain, hooked up to machines, including supplemental oxygen because my levels had dropped during surgery. I remember Patrick's face hovering over mine, his eyes red-rimmed from worry. "Hey, Bree," he murmured. "You're okay. The surgery went well. Just rest, okay?" I drifted in and out for hours, time stretching and collapsing around monitors' beeps. At some point that afternoon, my mother appeared at the foot of my bed, the smell of her perfume cutting through the antiseptic air. She looked around the room like she was judging it, and then me. "This hospital is cheap," she said. "You should have gone somewhere better." "Dr. Reynolds is excellent," I mumbled through the fog. "The surgery was complicated." "If you say so." Her gaze slid to Patrick. "I suppose you'll be taking care of her during recovery." "Of course I will," he said, jaw tight. "She's my wife." "We'll see how long that dedication lasts," she muttered. Then, just before she left, she leaned closer to me. "This surgery," she whispered, "is your chance to fix your life." I was too tired to argue, too medicated to unpack the threat inside her words. That night, around 9 p.m., Patrick finally went down to the cafeteria for his first real meal of the day. The room was dim, the hallway quiet. I drifted, half asleep, the oxygen mask hissing softly. The door opened. I thought it was a nurse. Then I heard her voice. "Briella," my mother said, low and urgent. "Wake up. We need to talk." I opened my eyes to see her standing beside my bed, her expression hard and determined. "Mom," I croaked, "visiting hours are over." "I told them there was a family emergency," she said calmly. "They let me in." I should have pressed the call button right then. I should have screamed. Instead, I asked the question that would change everything. "What emergency?" She smiled, a cold, thin curve of her lips. "The emergency," she said, "is your marriage. The emergency is your marriage." Her voice was calm, too calm. I blinked at her, the room swimming around the edges. Pain pulsed in my abdomen with every breath. The oxygen mask felt heavy on my face, but it was the only thing making breathing bearable. I don't understand," I said. "What does my marriage have to do with any of this? I just had surgery, Mom." "Exactly," she replied. "That's why this is the perfect time." She moved closer to the bed, her eyes bright with a kind of feverish intensity I'd never seen before. It reminded me of the way she used to study real estate listings and resumes when she talked about my future, like she was calculating ROI, not talking about a person. "This surgery is your opportunity, Briella," she said. "A clean slate, a fresh start. You can leave Patrick now, while you're recovering. I've already spoken to a divorce attorney. We can have papers drawn up by next week." I stared at her, honestly wondering for a second if this was a medication-induced hallucination. "What are you talking about?" My voice came out weak, muffled by the mask. I'm not divorcing Patrick." "Yes, you are," she snapped. "This has gone on long enough. 7 years you've wasted with that man. 7 years." She said 7 years, the way some people say prison sentence. I don't want to walk away, I whispered. I love him. Her face twisted, all the carefully maintained poise cracking around the edges. You don't know what love is, she spat. You settled for the first man who paid attention to you. I did not raise you to be mediocre. I tried to push myself up a little, a surge of anger cutting through the haze. Get out, Mom, I said. I'm not having this conversation right now. I just had major surgery. I'm in pain. I'm exhausted. Go home. Her eyes flashed. You're going to listen to me for once in your life. Her voice was rising. There was something almost desperate in it, but the kind of desperation that feels dangerous, not vulnerable. She stepped even closer, so near I could see every line on her face, the tightness around her mouth, the way her hands trembled, not from fear, but from rage. And then I saw her hand move. Not toward my forehead, not toward my arm in some kind of twisted attempt at comfort. Toward the oxygen tubing. My stomach turned to ice. Mom, don't, I croaked, suddenly wide awake in a way that had nothing to do with pain meds. Don't touch that. This, she said, fingers closing around the tube feeding air into my nose, is the only thing keeping you from making another stupid decision without consequences. You need to understand what's at stake, Briella. Mom, I said, panic sharpening my voice. Stop. I need that. You need to realize that man is dead weight, she hissed. You could have had so much more, and now no children, no legacy, nothing tying you to him. This is your chance. I'm not leaving him, I gasped. Not now, not ever. We chose each other. That's it. Her jaw clenched. Then maybe this, she said coldly, will convince you. Before I could press the call button, before I could scream, before I could even fully process what was happening, she yanked the nasal cannula out of my nose. The effect was immediate. It felt like someone had sliced away the little safety net under my breath. My chest seized. Air became thick and uncooperative. I sucked in a breath and got almost nothing. Put it back, I wheezed, reaching for the tube. I need that. No, she said, jerking it out of reach, her fingers flying to the machine itself. In one smooth, horrifying motion, she disconnected the oxygen from the monitor. The machine let out a shrill, continuous alarm. My world shrank to the sound of beeping and the white-hot burn in my lungs. Mom, I tried again, my voice breaking. I can't breathe. Stop, please. You need to hear me, she insisted, voice growing louder to compete with the technical scream of the equipment. You are going to divorce that worthless man, or... I clawed weakly toward the call button, but she grabbed my wrist and pinned it to the bed rail. My body felt like a bag of sand. I was groggy, in pain, my abdomen on fire, every breath a clawing effort. Let go, I gasped. I can't breathe. The monitor's alarm escalated. Somewhere in the distance, another machine started chiming in sympathy. You're being dramatic, she said, though there was a flutter of something like nerves in her eyes. You're fine. You're just panicking. No, I thought. I am not fine. I'm suffocating. I could feel my heartbeat thudding in my ears, heavy and uneven. The edges of the room blurred. My fingers tingled. My chest tightened until it felt like a belt was being cinched tighter and tighter around my ribs. Mom, I rasped, seeing black spots dance across my vision. Please, stop. She didn't. If you won't leave him willingly, she said over the screaming monitor, then maybe this will convince you. That's the moment from the beginning. That's the moment I realized my mother was willing to watch me die for the sake of my marriage. Nurse! I tried to scream, but it came out as a broken whisper. Somebody, help! The door burst open. A nurse with a badge reading Angela rushed in, followed a second later by a tall nurse, Terrence, and behind them, Patrick. Angela didn't waste a second. She physically shoved my mother aside, her chair scraping across the floor. Her hands went straight to the oxygen setup, reconnecting the tube with practiced speed. What happened? Angela demanded, eyes flicking from me to the machine to Gloria. She pulled it out, I gasped, as the first rush of oxygen hit my lungs again. It hurt, like breathing in after being underwater too long, but it was air. Patrick's gaze followed where I was pointing. His face went white, then red. You disconnected her oxygen, he exploded, turning on Gloria. Are you insane? I was trying to talk sense into her, Gloria snapped, smoothing her blouse like she was the wounded party. She wouldn't listen. Terrence was already on the phone, calling security and rattling off codes I couldn't quite follow. Angela was focused on me, watching the numbers rise on the monitor. Mrs. Lawson? She glanced at my chart, then back at me. Your oxygen saturation dropped to 78. Normal is 95 to 100. You could have gone into respiratory failure. Her eyes snapped to my mother, full of disgust. What were you thinking? I'm her mother, Gloria said sharply. I have a right. You have no right to interfere with medical equipment, Angela cut in, fury vibrating in her voice. None. You could have killed her. I told you it was an accident, Gloria protested, already rewriting the scene. I was adjusting her blankets. I must have bumped the tube. That's a lie, I managed, voice still weak but steadier now that oxygen was flowing again. She pulled it out, on purpose. She was trying to force me to agree to divorce Patrick. The way my mother looked at me in that moment, it wasn't guilt. It wasn't fear. It was betrayal, like I was the one breaking some sacred code by telling the truth. Security arrived within minutes. 2 officers in uniform. One, a man in his 40s with weary eyes. His name tag read Bradford. The other, a woman, younger, but with the same hardened look you get from seeing too much. Sullivan. Officer Bradford spoke first. We got a report of interference with life-supporting medical equipment, he said. We'll need statements from everyone. Angela and Terrence filled them in quickly. The alarms, the disconnected oxygen, my condition. Patrick told them what he'd seen and what he'd heard. I repeated my story, each word scraping against my dry throat. She told me this was my chance to divorce him, I said, nodding toward Patrick. She said she'd already talked to an attorney. When I refused, she pulled out the oxygen. She's exaggerating, Gloria interjected. I would never hurt my daughter. She's confused. She's on a lot of medication. I was just trying to help her see reason. Officer Sullivan's eyes narrowed. Ma'am, did you touch the oxygen equipment? She asked. I may have brushed it by mistake, Gloria said. You know how these machines are. They're sensitive. I was just fixing her blanket. That's not what the nurses saw, Sullivan replied, her tone flat. Officer Bradford looked at my mother with something like revulsion. Ma'am, he said carefully, you're going to need to come with us. This is ridiculous, Gloria snapped. You can't treat me like a criminal. She's my daughter. You literally just disconnected her oxygen, Officer Sullivan said. Given her post-surgical condition, that's assault at minimum, possibly worse. We'll let the detectives and the DA sort out the exact charges. They stepped closer. Gloria backed away, outrage coloring her cheeks. This is persecution, she hissed. I am being punished for caring about my daughter. You're being held accountable, Angela muttered under her breath. They escorted my mother out. She went, but not quietly, shouting about ungrateful children, about how Patrick had brainwashed me, about how she was the only one who truly loved me. Her voice echoed down the hallway even after the door shut. The room slowly quieted. The monitor settled into a steady rhythm. My breathing evened out, though my chest still ached. Patrick sat down in the chair beside my bed and took my hand, his fingers shaking. I almost lost you, he whispered, tears shining in his eyes. If I'd been gone one more minute. I squeezed his hand and stared at the closed door where my mother had just been. The woman who raised me had just tried to leverage my life to win an argument. Something fundamental had snapped. I could feel it, like a taut wire inside me finally breaking under pressure. The hospital administrator, a man named Mr. Thompson, came in a little while later to apologize on behalf of the hospital. He promised additional security, stricter enforcement of visiting rules, and assured us that Gloria was now banned from the premises. We're very sorry, Mrs. Lawson, he said. This should never have happened. Your safety is our top priority from this point on. Dr. Reynolds came by next, looking visibly shaken. Briella, she said gently, I'm so sorry. We're monitoring you very closely. Your oxygen levels are stabilizing, but that drop was dangerous. You're going to be okay, but I'd like to keep you an extra day for observation. I nodded, but my mind wasn't really on my lungs anymore. My mother had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. I just didn't realize yet that we were only at the beginning. Because the moment she stepped out of that hospital in handcuffs, my life stopped being just a medical case and became a criminal one. Security had barely finished escorting my mother out of the hospital when the next shift of chaos began. By morning, a detective was standing at the foot of my bed. He was tall, mid-40s, with a neatly trimmed beard, and the kind of calm expression you only see on people who have lived through far more than they ever talk about. His badge identified him as Detective Harrison. Mrs. Lawson, he greeted me gently. I understand you had a disturbing incident last night. My throat tightened. Even the word incident felt too small for what happened. Patrick sat in the chair beside me, his eyes never leaving my face. He hadn't slept at all. I need to take a formal statement, Detective Harrison continued, but I want to walk through everything slowly. If you need a break, tell me. He pulled out a small recorder. Let's start from the moment your mother entered the room. And I told him how she lied to get in by claiming a family emergency, how she said my surgery was an opportunity to leave my husband, how she demanded I divorce Patrick, how she said she already had an attorney, how, when I refused, she pulled out the oxygen tubing, how she held my wrist down, how I begged her to stop. Patrick gripped the arm of his chair so tightly his knuckles went white. When I got to the part where I felt myself suffocating, Detective Harrison's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "The nurses and security corroborated your account," he said when I finished, "and the hospital's cameras confirm that she entered your room at 9:08 p.m., triggering alarms at 9:12. It matches the timing of the oxygen disconnection." I closed my eyes. Hearing it described clinically, like data in a file, made it feel both unreal and too real at once. "Based on everything," he continued carefully, "your mother is being charged with aggravated assault and reckless endangerment." Patrick let out a sharp breath. "And attempted murder?" he asked. "We're reviewing it," Harrison said. "Her intent is a critical factor. The DA will decide whether to pursue that charge." I swallowed hard. My mother, charged with assaulting me, possibly attempted murder. There are moments in life when reality feels like it's shifting under your feet, like the whole world is tilting sideways. This was one of those moments. "She told me," I whispered, "that she wanted me to divorce him. That's why she did it." Harrison made a note. "That's important," he said. "Motivation matters." He thanked me, collected statements from Patrick and the nurses again, and left to continue processing the case. The hospital administrator, Mr. Thompson, returned to assure me that Gloria was officially banned from the hospital grounds. "She will not be permitted within 500 feet of this facility," he promised, "and your room has added security on rotation." The rest of the morning blurred together. Doctors checking my oxygen levels, nurses adjusting my medication, Patrick adjusting pillows and blankets and trying to force me to drink water. But when visiting hours resumed, the real fallout began. I knew my mother wouldn't go quietly. Within hours, she began calling family members. Aunt Stephanie was the first to call me, her voice shaky with disbelief. "Briella, sweetheart, I just got off the phone with your mother. She said you had her arrested." "Arrested? What on earth happened?" I took a deep breath. "She disconnected my oxygen, Aunt Stephanie, on purpose." There was a beat of silence, then a shaky exhale. "Oh my God." She came to see me that afternoon, bringing flowers she forgot to remove the plastic from and crying before she even got through the door. "I knew your mother was controlling," she whispered, taking my hand. "But this is psychotic." Her son, my cousin Brandon, came with her. He hugged me gently, shaking his head. "I always thought she gave off weird vibes," he said quietly. "But I never thought she'd... Bree, she could have killed you." Not everyone took my side. By dinner, Diane, my mother's closest friend, called my phone 14 times before Patrick finally picked up. "I hope you're happy," she shouted loud enough that I could hear from the bed. "Your mother raised you alone after your father died. She sacrificed everything, and this is how you repay her? Having her arrested like some criminal?" "She tried to kill my wife," Patrick said, steady but icy. "She was emotional," Diane snapped. "You don't understand what a mother goes through." Patrick ended the call. I cried after that. Not because I believed Diane, but because deep down, a part of me still ached at the idea of people defending my mother, even now. The next morning, Detective Harrison returned. "Your mother has been arraigned," he said. "She's out on bail for now, but a restraining order has been approved. She can't come within 500 feet of you or Patrick." I let out a shaky breath. "That includes our home?" I asked. "Your home, your workplace, anywhere you receive medical care," he confirmed. "She violates it, she goes straight to jail." Patrick slipped his hand into mine and squeezed. I felt relief and grief and a terrible, hollow heaviness I couldn't name. My mother wasn't just toxic. She wasn't just controlling. She was dangerous. And the law agreed. After 2 more days, Dr. Reynolds discharged me. Patrick walked slowly beside my wheelchair, his hand never leaving my shoulder. Getting into our car felt like crossing a border between 2 different versions of my life, the one where my mother was difficult but manageable, and the one where she was an imminent threat. The apartment was filled with casseroles and soup from Patrick's parents. His mom, Helen, hugged me gently, whispering, "We're just glad you're okay." His dad, Walter, insisted on checking the locks on all the doors and windows. It was the kind of parental care I'd never actually experienced from my own mother. My aunt and cousin visited every other day. Stephanie brought cookies she burned slightly, again. Brandon brought noise-canceling headphones for when you're tired of people talking, which made me laugh for the first time since the incident. Their presence grounded me. But at night, when Patrick was asleep, I lay awake replaying everything. Her face, her hands on the tubing, the coldness in her voice. I couldn't erase it, and I knew it wasn't over. Because cases like this don't disappear. They go to court. And when they do, you have to see the person who tried to kill you. You have to speak the truth while they stare back at you from the defendant's table. And I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. But the trial date was already set. And when I opened that letter a week later, my hand shook so hard the paper almost tore. The envelope with the court seal sat on our kitchen table for almost an hour before I could bring myself to open it. Patrick hovered nearby, pretending to tidy up the counter, but really he was watching me, waiting for the moment I felt ready. When I finally slid my thumb under the flap, my heart hammered so loudly it drowned out everything else. The trial would begin in March, 4 months after the incident. Not much time, and somehow too much time. Patrick wrapped his arms around me from behind, pressing his cheek to the top of my head. "You don't have to face her alone," he murmured. But the truth was, no matter how many people sat beside me, this was a road only I could walk. A road I never dreamed I'd have to walk, in a courtroom, in front of strangers, with my own mother sitting a few feet away. The weeks leading up to the trial were consumed by meetings with Ms. Washington, the prosecutor assigned to the case. She was sharp-eyed, meticulous, and had a quiet intensity that made me trust her instantly. "We're going to take this step by step," she assured me during our first meeting. "You're not on trial. Your mother is. Our job is to present the truth clearly and without hesitation." I nodded, even though my stomach twisted every time we practiced my testimony. Patrick attended every meeting. He asked questions I didn't have the strength to ask. He took notes I couldn't bring myself to read. He held my hand so tightly those weeks, you'd think the world was trying to pull me away from him. On the morning of the trial, Denver was covered in a thin layer of frost, quiet, sharp, unforgiving, fitting, somehow. The courthouse smelled like old paper and cold air. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed softly, like they'd been burning since the dawn of time. Patrick squeezed my hand as we stepped inside. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. It was a lie, but I knew he knew that. Walking into the courtroom felt like stepping into an alternate version of my life. Rows of benches, a judge's bench towering above, a jury box, reporters murmuring in the back. And then I saw her, my mother, sitting at the defense table. Gloria wore the same expression she used to wear at my childhood recitals when I hit a wrong note. Tight-lipped, judgmental, annoyed, as if she were the one being wronged. She didn't look guilty. She didn't look ashamed. She looked angry. Angry at me, as if I were the one putting her through this. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. She glared, and I realized she wasn't here to apologize. She was here to win. When they called my name, my legs felt heavy, like I was wading through cement. Ms. Washington met my eyes from the prosecutor's table and nodded, a silent reassurance. I took the oath, sat down, and the questioning began. "Mrs. Lawson," Ms. Washington said gently, "can you tell the court what happened on the night of November 8th? My heart pounded, but I forced myself to speak. I told them everything. How she lied to enter after hours. How she said the surgery was my opportunity to leave Patrick. Her demand that I divorce him. The argument. The oxygen tubing. The beeping machines. The suffocating panic. The moment I realized she wasn't going to stop. My voice shook only once, when I described the moment the oxygen left my lungs. "I thought I was going to die," I whispered, "and I thought my mother was going to watch me." Patrick wiped his eyes in the front row. Even some jurors looked unsettled. Then came the defense attorney, a slick man with a disturbingly calm voice. "Mrs. Lawson," he said, "isn't it possible that your mother acted in a moment of panic, a misunderstanding? You were heavily medicated after surgery. Is it possible you misinterpreted her actions?" The implication twisted my stomach. "No," I said firmly. "I didn't misinterpret anything. She told me exactly what she was doing. She said she wanted me to divorce my husband. She disconnected the oxygen on purpose." He pressed on. "Is it possible she simply bumped the tubing by accident?" "No," I said again. "She held my wrist down so I couldn't press the call button." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The defense attorney paused, regrouped, then tried a new angle. "Your mother has always cared deeply about your future, hasn't she? Is it possible she was merely—" "I'm sorry," I cut in, my voice steadying with every word, "but caring doesn't look like cutting off someone's ability to breathe." Silence. It was the first time I felt the room shift, not toward sympathy for me, but toward disbelief in her. Patrick testified next. He described the alarms, the panic, the moment he saw me gasping for air. Nurse Angela and Nurse Terrence took the stand after him. Their testimonies were devastating. Angela described how she physically pushed Gloria aside to reconnect the oxygen. Terrence described the oxygen levels dropping to a life-threatening 78%. Then the prosecution played the security footage. The footage wasn't crystal clear. Hospital cameras never are. But it captured enough. Gloria entering the room long after visiting hours, her leaning over my bed, her arm reaching for the machine, the alarms, the chaos that followed. The defense attorney tried to claim the footage was inconclusive. The jury didn't look convinced. Ms. Washington delivered a closing argument that left chills running down my spine. This was not a moment of panic, she said firmly. This was a calculated attempt to coerce her daughter through medical endangerment. Gloria Hayes lied to enter the hospital. She approached the oxygen equipment only after her daughter refused to divorce her husband. She ignored her daughter's pleas. She held her wrist down to prevent her from calling for help. She paused. This was not love. This was control, and it nearly became lethal. My mother refused to meet my eyes. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. 6 hours of pacing the hallway. 6 hours of Patrick rubbing circles into my back. 6 hours of feeling like my entire life hung on a thread. When the bailiff finally announced that the jury had reached a verdict, my knees almost gave out. We filed into the courtroom again. The judge asked for silence. The foreman stood. We find the defendant, Gloria Hayes, guilty of aggravated assault, guilty of reckless endangerment. My breath caught. I felt Patrick's hand tighten around mine. My aunt, seated behind us, began to cry softly. My mother's face went slack, then twisted into something ugly, venomous. She snapped. "This is because of him," she shouted, pointing at Patrick. "That man poisoned you against me. I did everything for you, Briella, everything." Judge Anderson banged her gavel sharply. "Ms. Hayes," she said coldly, "you violated the most fundamental duty of a parent, to protect your child. Instead, you endangered her life in pursuit of control." Then she delivered the sentence. 3 years in prison, 2 years probation, mandatory psychological evaluation and treatment, restraining order extended for 5 years after release. My mother screamed as they cuffed her. "You're making a mistake, Briella. I'm your mother. I am your mother." I didn't cry. Not then. I just said quietly, "You stopped being my mother when you tried to kill me." And they dragged her away. Patrick wrapped me in his arms, and I finally let myself breathe. For the first time in years, no oxygen mask, no fear, just air. The trial ended, but the aftermath didn't. People assume that once the guilty verdict is read and the gavel comes down, life resets, that you walk out of the courtroom, inhale a deep cleansing breath, and everything finally returns to normal. But trauma doesn't work on a judge's schedule. It lingers. It echoes. It reshapes you. And mine had only just begun. In the days after my mother was taken into custody, I kept expecting to feel something. Relief, grief, closure, rage, anything. Instead, I felt hollow. I'd wake up at night with the phantom sensation of choking, my lungs clawing for air, even though I was breathing fine. Patrick would hold me while I trembled, whispering, "You're safe, Bree. I'm here. You're safe." I wasn't used to being cared for like that. Not really. I'd spent most of my life earning my mother's approval, like love was a prize, and I was constantly behind on points. But now I had to relearn everything. How to trust myself, how to trust other people, how to feel safe, even how to breathe. Dr. Nguyen, my therapist, saved me. Not by offering cliches or telling me to be strong, but by telling me the truth. You can love someone and still be terrified of them. You can have compassion for someone and still recognize that they are dangerous. Both can coexist. For the first time, someone gave me permission to stop trying to fix my mother. I wasn't responsible for her mental state, or her rage, or the choices she made that nearly killed me. I was only responsible for my own survival. Some sessions were quiet, some were brutal. Some left me sobbing into tissues until my head throbbed. But brick by brick, we rebuilt something inside me. Not the old version of myself, a new structure, stronger, grounded, aware of boundaries I never knew I was allowed to set. And at the heart of that new foundation was one truth. Love without safety isn't love at all. About a month after the trial, the first letter came. Her handwriting on the envelope sent a cold spike through my spine. I didn't open it. Patrick didn't ask why. He didn't push. He simply took the envelope, slid it into a drawer, and said, "Tell me if you ever want me to get rid of them." They kept coming. Each week, neatly addressed, neatly written, neatly unopened. I didn't have to read them to know what they said. Manipulation has its own predictable scent. So does desperation. 6 letters in, I stopped checking the mail entirely. We filed a police report documenting the contact. Even mailed letters, so long as they avoided threats, didn't technically violate her restraining order, but they would be noted in her parole review. I was already preparing my statement for when that day came. I fear for my safety. I fear for my future. I fear what she will do if she comes near me again. Those were the words I practiced. Not for drama, not for revenge, for survival. Grief does strange things to people, and when the person who harmed you is also the person who raised you, everyone suddenly feels entitled to an opinion. Some people were kind. I'm so glad you're okay. You didn't deserve any of that. You're incredibly strong. Others weren't. One afternoon, Patrick came home from school looking furious. He put his bag down harder than usual. You won't believe what happened today. My stomach tightened. What? One of the teachers, Mr. Peyton, pulled me aside. He said you should consider forgiveness because family is family. The disgust in Patrick's voice made heat rise in my chest. What did you say? I asked. That she tried to kill you, he snapped. I asked him if he'd tell a victim of attempted murder to forgive because holidays are lonely. I rubbed my forehead. People love simple answers to complicated tragedies. Family is one of the laziest. Because here's the hard truth. Sometimes the person who gave you life becomes the person who endangers it, and you are not obligated to let them try again. If my mother's absence carved out a space in my life, the people who loved me filled it in. Aunt Stephanie now hosted Sunday dinners every other week. The kind where you show up in sweatpants, eat too much garlic bread, and gripe about ridiculous coworkers. Patrick's parents came too. Helen with her famous apple pie, Walter with jokes so bad they made Brandon spit out his drink at least once every meal. We were loud, messy, unplanned, human. It felt like healing. It felt like family. One night, as we left Stephanie's house, Patrick paused at the car and looked at me. You okay? He asked, brushing hair from my face. I nodded. Yeah, I think I am. It wasn't an epiphany, not a movie moment, just a quiet realization. I didn't miss the woman who raised me. I missed the mother I wanted her to be. And those are two very different people. Months passed. Patrick and I took a weekend trip to Rocky Mountain National Park, our first getaway since everything happened. We hiked slow, ate takeout on the hotel bed, and talked for hours. About the future. About us. About a dog we wanted to adopt. Maybe a golden retriever with one floppy ear. It felt good to dream again. We planned a trip to Seattle next summer, talked about repainting the living room, argued over which air fryer to buy. Small things, normal things, beautiful things. Because when you've survived something that tries to take your breath away, literally, you learn to appreciate every simple inhale life gives you. Sometimes I still think about that night in the hospital. Not with fear, not with bitterness. Just clarity, the feeling of suffocating. The alarms. The moment I saw my mother's face and realized she was willing to let me die if it meant controlling my life. Then I think about Patrick bursting into the room, Angela reconnecting the oxygen, Terrence calling security, Dr. Reynolds fighting for my recovery, Detective Harrison pursuing justice, Stephanie and Brandon showing up with unconditional support. Those people saved me. They are my family, not the woman whose last act of motherhood was a crime. And that brings me to the question I asked myself, and now I ask the world. If your parent tried to kill you because they couldn't control your life choices, would you ever consider reconciliation? Some people say yes. Some say forgiveness is the right thing. But here's my truth. Some betrayals are too catastrophic to undo. Some wounds go too deep. Some bridges, once burned, should never be rebuilt. And that doesn't make you cruel. It makes you human. It makes you safe. It makes you free. I'm Briella Hawthorne, and this is my story.